All right, guys, good evening. Benjamin Hatfield. I will be your instructor today. I am an instructor trainer, and we are doing the instructor trainer course. Tonight we're doing presentations again. So we've got Ken and Nikki both prepared for presentations. The biggest thing I just want to really impart and just make sure we're super clear on that. And you just got to always remember when building these presentations, the simplest way to build a presentation is to pull the evaluation form out. And as you pull that evaluation form out, I like to have it printed next to me. And I take a pen and I literally go through, and as I'm building my presentation, I make sure slide 1, is it an objective? Slide 2, is there value? Slide 3, is there main points outlined? And if I get those 3, and then I copy and paste those same 3 slides, those will be my ending slides as well. I'll just change how I express them as well. And if I do that, that's an easy 18 points of the 32 that I need, right? And so just a quick tip for you. Sorry, and I apologize, 36 that you need. So it's 50% of your points just by making sure you have those 6 slides. So as you go through this, just make sure you build it and you say, am I talking about equipment sales, something specific, and giving them a clear motivation to purchase with this. Check, I got that. Did I talk about local dive travel? And I always like to make sure that suggest to you guys that anytime you see something like or, for example, in the Diver Diamond, promoted continuing education or local diving and travel, I would best suggestion I can give you on that is always change those to and. So make sure that you give a con ed as well as local diving and travel, and make sure those examples are very specific. Well, and as you're talking to the class, say, okay, well, and we're going to have a dive along on Saturday at 9 a.m. You can pick up tanks on Friday afternoon, and we'd love to have you along. Our goal of that dive is to do a cleanup of the local reservoir and get all those tin cans and plastic and ghost fishing line out of the reservoir. And the cool thing is, if you do something like that with local dive, where you're doing a dive along as a cleanup, there's also later on, as you start delivered an environmental or safe diving practice message. So you can get credit for an environmental message. Hey, we're doing cleanup because we want to help the environment. So it's a really easy twofer. But in that same section, delivered an environmental or safe diving practice message. Make sure you use that or as an and throw in there. And while we're there, we're also going to talk about diving your plan and planning your dive, because we want to make sure that you guys are safe and know how not to touch the reef. So in one message, you could literally end up with another 9 points if you do it right and getting that portion. But make sure you can add in there as well. And while we're out there, we're also going to talk about deep diving or something else. Or, so you can make one message that covers multiple topics. And this is one of those times where you can mingle along. Just make sure it's a clear, concise, like 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, we're going to do this. We're doing nitrox next week. On Thursday night, it's $100 for the class, and we're going to do that at 6 o'clock here at the dive shop. Make sure it's very clear here. And if you're talking about equipment, make sure we don't just say, and BCs are great with ditchable weight system. I particularly like the Ranger LTD. It has the ripcord system on it. It's fantastic. It has 4 dumps on it. I can change the LP hose, inflator hose to one side or the other. It has 18 D rings. I don't think it has actually 18 D rings, but you know what I mean. So I give something specific, and whatever I talk about, I make sure I'm very specific on this location. We're going to Roatan on this date. We're going to Ryrie on this date. Con ed for this is going to be this, is computer equipment specialty for Con ed, because you're going to learn how to right? Very specific, and we're going to teach that this time. So make sure you're specific on how do I get the Con ed, what is the Con ed, how does it apply, or the local education or local dive travel or international dive travel. We're going to do it this date, right? And is make sure that it's specific and I know what I'm talking about, and then make sure you guys are asking lots of questions. So those are my kind of cue points, and those are super easy ones. If you just remember those little pieces in there, getting the 36 is actually pretty simple. So that's my encouragement. At the end of this, Ken's going to be first up on presentation. I'm going to add your presentation to the this, and I will be using the instructor evaluation form. And at the end of this, I will send it over to you as well. So Ken, you have 8 to 12 minutes. I show current time on deck of 6:14. So I'll put 6:15 to make sure we give you even time. I always try and round evenly. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready for you.
Okay, so for the first slides, I would do for a general class, and then the rest of it will go to the specifics of the topic that I have.
That's fine. So, just give me your full 8 to 12 minute presentation. All
right. So welcome to class. So I'm Ken Condon. I'm going to be your instructor. And just a bit about myself. So I've been diving since 1989. And one of the things that I've seen over the years is just massive changes in the dive industry on what we're taught, the change in equipment, things like that. So if you're starting your diving experience, diving career, you need to continue on with your education and really push forward and take as many classes as you probably can and take some refresher change. And we want to make sure that you're staying up to date, because if you're up to date, you're safe. And that's one of the most important things. So I'm a retired U.S. Army engineer captain. I spent a lot of time doing different things, teaching people over the years. I was an instructor at the U.S. Army SEER School. That's the Survive, Evade, Resist, Escape School. I did that for 2 years. I also taught people how to be part of the demonstration platoon for the U.S. Army's 1st Cavalry Division. I taught at the NCO Academy and the Officer Candidate School. And I'm also a outdoor survival instructor, firearms instructor. So I do a lot of teaching through different things. So general information about the class. Emergency exits are in the back of the building and off to the sides. There's a first aid kit in the back of the room. It's right over there for those of you who can't see it on camera. Touch on decorum. Let's not talk over each other. If somebody is speaking, give them a chance to speak. If we start to get bogged down, I'll say moving on. And from there, we'll just go on to the next topic, next slides. We'll be taking breaks about every hour. If you want to have food and drinks in class, that's fine, as long as they're not a disruption to the teaching environment and to other students. So our first topic is the delivery system. So would somebody like to tell me what they think the delivery system is and why it's important as part of SCUBA? How about you, Nikki?
Sure. I would guess from the photo that you have up that the delivery system is how we breathe underwater.
Absolutely. And, you know, most things in SCUBA, they're pretty self-evident as to what they are. If it says delivery system, it's probably delivering air. So the major components of your delivery system are your regulators, your diving cylinders, and then the valves on the cylinders themselves. So as we go through this class, by the time we're done with this block of instruction, you'll be able to identify the major parts of the regulators, the major parts and markings on the SCUBA cylinders, and have an idea of the different types of valves and why they're important. So the real basics on your SCUBA cylinder. Actually, can you go to me on this? Back to my camera. Okay, so I have a couple types of a couple sets of regulators here. So first off, this is what most of us see when we do our open water classes. So we have our first stage right here that hooks into our cylinder. We have our primary here, and this is what we breathe off of most of the time. And then we have our octopus, and that is for emergency situations for air sharing, or if we have a problem with our own regulator set and need to move on. And then depending on how you're diving and how your equipment is set up, you may have multiple, you'll always have an inflator hose of some sort for your buoyancy compensator to deliver air to the BC. And you may have any number of hoses. If you're dry suit diving, you'll have extras. For my particular setup, I have a tank pod here. This wirelessly transmits data from my tank, from my SCUBA equipment, to one of my dive computers. And right here, I've got a really small one, and some dive computers are quite large. So it's just a matter of what you have, but you need information. And then over here, I have the same basic setup. This is the same style as the other one. So my first stage, and then I have my second stage, which I breathe off of. And then I have an inflator hose. So is there a reason why I might only have 2 hoses on this instead of the 3 to 4 like on some of the others. What could you do to eliminate hoses? What's another way you could get a delivery source when it comes to your regulators? Anybody?
So they do have the piece that's like a integrated inflate your BC and use it as your backup regulator.
Absolutely. And that's what this is right here. So this hooks into my inflator hose, and then the hose that goes to the BC connects on here. And so instead of an octopus, if I need to breathe in an emergency situation, I just breathe off of this. So I have an inflate and a deflate button to let air in or out of my BC. So that delivers air to the buoyancy compensator itself. And then this is the other type of inflator that most of us have seen. So if you have an octopus, you can connect your inflator hose here and from your regulator set, and then this hooks into your buoyancy compensator. Same basic function. So you hit this button, adds air to the BC, and then you hit this button and it removes air from your BC. So those are the primary parts and components of your regulator system, your air delivery system. There's a vast variety of setups and styles you can have, and part of that is trying things out. So you can go to your local dive shop. We have plenty of gear you can rent and things you can try out. I'm notorious for loaning out my gear to people for them to try it out. So if you want to try my stuff, that's absolutely fine. We can get you set up and let you practice with the things and see how that's going to work. So the air delivery system is very, very important. You've got to make sure it's well maintained, and we're going to get into that a little bit more later. Can you pop my slides back up, please? Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the tank. So the tank holds your air. As part of the class, you probably walked around and seen a whole bunch of different sizes and shapes of tanks, and you may be wondering what that's about. So on every single SCUBA cylinder, it's going to have the maximum pressure. So on this one, on the slide, it shows that 3,000 PSI. So that's your maximum pressure, your maximum operating pressure. There's also a DOT number, and that's your Department of Transportation number. And that is the transportation class of the cylinder. So basically any SCUBA cylinder that you're going to use recreationally, you'll be able to transport in your personal vehicle without special permits, things like that. Then under where it says DOT on the slide, you'll see a serial number. To the right of that, where it says MFG, that's the manufacturer born on date. So that tells you how old the cylinder is when it was made. And then underneath that, there is an S and an 80. Does anybody know what that means? Okay, so the S is for standard and the 80 is the volume. So this is, so if you saw this on a SCUBA cylinder, that would be a standard pressure 80 cubic foot tank. So back to me, please. Okay, so I grabbed a SCUBA cylinder here from somebody who just abandoned it in the dive shop. And you can see it's just from the camera, it's rather hard to see some of the information that's on the tank, but it's all exactly the same. So we have over here on this side, it has the S80. So this is an aluminum 80, and this is the single most common cylinder you're going to find in the SCUBA industry. When you go travel, pretty much always you're going to dive with an aluminum 80, and it's going to have all the same markings. So if you're using rental equipment and you're traveling, you might want to go with something, might want to be able to read your tank so you know what's going on. And then this tank, this is a bit heavier. So this says HP 80. The HP stands for high pressure. So this is a steel tank, so it can handle more pressure. And I'll actually tell you on here the max PSI. But you might notice it's a bit shorter than the other one. So it holds the same volume, it holds higher pressure, but since it's a steel tank, it can hold more pressure. So you need to be able to understand what the difference is between the two types, or the two primary types of tanks. Most of us are going to dive steels or aluminums. So you need to understand how much you've got, because when you set up your computer, you're going to need to know what information to put in there. Because if you're diving a high pressure steel 80 or a high pressure steel 100, that's the same. The high pressure steel 100s are the same dimensions as the aluminum 80. That's information you need to have so you can dive safely and track your information. Okay, back to the slides, please. Okay, so wow, that got messed up somehow. So this is the sticker that talks about how your tank is set up. It has your inspection data. The tanks that I have here have the stickers on them that are a little bit better. Sorry, that got messed up somehow. So you need to be able to care and maintain your delivery system. So with your regulators, you need to be, those need to go into your local dive shop once a year, have them looked at, have them serviced. Same thing with your SCUBA cylinders. Now there's a variety of different types of maintenance that have to go on when it comes to your SCUBA cylinders. Sometimes it's just a visual inspection. Sometimes it's a hydrostatic test. So there's other things like that that go on. Those are not things that you can do yourself. You don't, I've been diving for a long time. I don't have the equipment to do the maintenance and inspections on my tanks. And it also needs to be done by a professional. Very important, have it done professionally, make sure you're getting it done safely. And then with your regulators, there are classes you can take on maintenance, which I would encourage you to do, so you can be more familiar with your regulators and your delivery systems. But you need to definitely take that to your local dive shop. Can you go back to me, please? Okay, so that's the basics of the delivery system. So what are the primary pieces of our delivery system?
I would say the first stage, your second stage, your primary second stage, your backup, and hose to your inflator of your BC. Very
good. That's exactly it. And then we also have the tank that goes along with that. And then on the tanks, we have our valves. There's a variety of different types, shapes, and forms of valves. And we will go over that in a future class. So it's very important, again, make sure you're maintaining your gear. Make sure you know how things are put together and what's going on with them. Take them into your local dive shop. If you're not getting your stuff maintained, you're not going to be able to dive safely. You're going to get yourself hurt, and you're probably going to get your dive buddy hurt as well. So thanks very much, and let's go on to our next one.
Okay. All right. Give me just one moment here.
Oh, what did I do here? There we go. While you're doing that, I'm going to smooth stuff out of my way.
Sure. Almost done. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
All righty, ready. Okay. So let me share my screen as well, so you see where I'm getting my information from. All right. There we go. Okay. So just to start off with, let's see. Unfortunately, Ken, this wouldn't have been a pass on this pass. This was a good first stab, and it was a good effort. And it's not going to take much to move this into the passing category. And here's why it didn't pass. This little booger right here is minimum of 5 points must be scored in every category. And unfortunately, missed a couple categories overall on that as well. So, but it wouldn't take much. So as you go through these, one of the things I would encourage is, let me pull up an actual presentation that I did that scored well, just so you can see what I'm talking about. And we on the same sheet of music. Let's see. Oh, it would help if I pulled up presentations instead of Word documents. Yes, it would. There we go. Okay. Here we go. I'm just going to pull up the adaptive dive buddy, and let's see. Stop share, present, share screen. So this is the adaptive dive program, and so I start off with a very simple slide. This is what we're going to be doing, and then just like on the form that we start with, here's the objectives we're going to accomplish today. After completing this lesson, you should be able to. And these have to be, objectives need to be measurable, right? You'll be able to list this. You'll be able to discuss this. You'll be able to review the SSI training standards for classified buddies. The value to you, this is why you want to take it. And this is why it's interesting to you. So a clear present value. And then the next slide is here's what we're going to do. The main topics we're going to discuss is the philosophy of classified divers, diver level 1, diver level 2, level 3, right? And so just making it a real clear boom, boom, boom of objectives, value, and main points. And so let me stop sharing that. And if you do those as your first 3 slides and your last 3 slides, it's an easy 18 points because all the information that you need is in the book. And it kind of becomes a slam dunk for you. So I'll bring this back up. Define objectives in measurable terms, value to the students, and main points, and that's these first 2 is what killed you, is the value and the objective. So if you just make a slide for that and just here's what you're going to learn today, and at the end of this you'll be able to do this. The value to you is if you don't do this, you die. Don't say die. I'm just kidding. That's a negative connotation. But as you go through that, you want to be able to give it a clear. Being able to breathe through this makes your dive a lot more enjoyable. You go through more gas because you get more bottom time. You get a much more fun dive, and you get to see a lot more cool fish. So you definitely want to really understand this, right? Whatever it is, right? Usually the value of the topic is going to be right in the book as well. You did go through you provided me main points, and you gave me a slide on that. For your evaluator, I would make sure that you clearly state out, this is the main points I'm going to discuss today. Boom, 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 right? Remember, somebody's evaluating you with this. And so one of the things I noticed at the beginning is I would definitely thin down, especially for these presentations for your class. Absolutely. I like the beginning. And I like that you went through that. Here's who I am. Here's what I did. Here's why I'm an appropriate teacher for that. And I usually start I love that. I think that's great for these evaluations. You don't have to go nearly as in depth. Or give me a rules of engagement for this class of where the restrooms are. You don't have to do that. You can skip and use that time for other things. And where you'll find is there's some topics that you'll be given that you have a limited amount of time. So every minute in that you spend in introduction is a minute that you'll get to use for your actual presentation. And remember, we're evaluating your knowledge of the information, not you. I trust at this point that you're well qualified, and then the evaluator will say the same thing. He's going to say, okay, Ken is well qualified. If he wasn't well qualified and a competent diver with qualifications to be able to teach, he wouldn't be in an ITC. Well, hopefully at least, right? You know, you're not a zero to hero, so hopefully you've got more than 3 dives under your belt by this point, right? And that's just me being funny. But so we're not as worried about that in the evaluation as we are that you understand the knowledge that you're going to be teaching and passing on, and making safe and autonomous divers that are able to dive with an equally or more qualified buddy. And that's the overall goal. That's you as an instructor. That's straight from SSI. That's not me. That's what they're looking for, is to be able to create safe and autonomous divers that can dive with an equal or more qualified buddy. And that's a term that I would get into my head now. And that's our goal. My litmus is a little higher, just so you're aware, is not only to create safe and autonomous divers who can dive with equal or more qualified buddy, but I use the SDI term of that same thing, but that I'd feel confident letting them dive with my most precious loved one. So that's just between you and me. That's the litmus I use, but it comes down to the same thing. As we kind of went through this, obviously knowledge and skill, the practical application of knowledge, you know what this stuff is, and I'm not worried about that at all. So I gave you, I shouldn't say I didn't give you anything. You earned in that category of 3, which is the maximum of that as well. Equipment, sales, counseling, and motivate to purchase. What am I going to purchase? What was the thing that you're selling me that I want to go out and buy? What was something specific that I want to buy, and how do I get it? Was there something in there? I didn't catch it if there was.
Yeah, I didn't get into why you should buy the delivery system components.
Absolutely. And that's an easy fix. That's a super easy fix, because that's what I said at the beginning, is we want to make sure we're very specific. I saw you popped up that Sunto computer. It would have been an easy transition. This is the new Sunto computer. It is a complete game changer. We have them here in the shop for $8.95. I'm diving one, and I think it's amazing. By the way, hey, why don't and here's another kind of bundled package for you is now I want you to really guys, check this thing out and hand it off to the students and say, and you can pretend for these virtual conversations, you can absolutely pretend, but when you go to the IE, make sure if you've got that Sunto computer out, hey guys, let's pass this around. Check this out. This thing's amazing. Feel how light it is. Oh my goodness. Right. Or whatever, but pass it around, because then it stops being a prop and it starts becoming a training aid, which you got, there was a deduction later on in that as well. So be specific. I love this because this, and you should love it too, is really what you're trying to get across. And so it's an easy fix. You earned a 2 in that category, or I'm sorry, a 1 in that category. The next one is experience promoted continuing education or local dive travel. There was Con Ed in there, and it wouldn't have been a far push to go into equipment techniques. That's a actual SSI specialty, or computer diver. Those were both really easy. If you like this Sunto computer, you should definitely get this computer, because it's amazing. And just so you know, we have the computer specialty as well, and we will sit you down for 2 hours and we'll teach you everything you need to know about this computer. That class, I can schedule that for us next Tuesday. And it's fantastic. So there's equipment, there's the equipment techniques specialty as well. If you want to know more about how your delivery system works, the equipment techniques specialty is fantastic. You should definitely take that. We generally do that with Brett, or who is the shop lead technician and knows more about these regulators than most of us, because he's certified through the manufacturer on that. So let's get you taken care of with that, right? So be very specific with that. The other thing that SSI loves is for you to tell personal diving stories. I use this here, and I loved it, because the idea is to create the vision of diving, right? That diving's fun, and it's we as gear nerds get too much into, oh man, and did you know it's got a 1.5 volt lithium ion battery? I'm just picking something randomly, right? nobody cares, right? As you look at this pod, did you notice it also has a charging port on the side? Super cool right here. And it charges, and also you can reprogram it, it flashes, da, 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 da. That's all cool, but these are new students, right? So the idea is they're like, pod, what I really loved about this is I was diving at a Ryrie the other day and I was starting to get low on gas, and it was flashing yellow. And my dive buddy came up to me behind me. She tapped me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, where's your gas?" And she found out that I was at 1100 psi. So we went ahead and turned our dive. So that was a really great safety feature because it flashed yellow. She knew I was below 1500, but above 500 psi. So she checked on me. It was awesome. And in that particular case, you get a bonus for being safe and accurate information, but also safe diving, right? So you can bundle a lot of these into one thing as well. So make sure your con ed is specific to the course, and your equipment is specific as well, and adding those flares. And it was great. We were out at Ryrie, we were diving at 55 feet. It was awesome. We were seeing lots of crawdads. You should have seen the trout I saw. It was fantastic. So add those local dive stories as well. And then same thing with dive travel and con ed. The dive shop's gone to some pretty cool places. And I mean, you spent what 11 days in Fiji?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you definitely need to throw some stories about Fiji in, right? I used this computer in Fiji, and it was amazing. It was bright and clear, and it was almost as bright and clear and neat as watching the big fish that floated by, right, or whatever, right? Or I saw a crab. It was really neat. It came out, and it was the biggest crab I'd ever seen, or whatever. Throw those local stories in, so I get the imagination. So diving isn't dry. I can start seeing you diving this, and I can eventually have a desire for me to do that as well. Third section was knowledge and understanding of what we're talking about. So safe and accurate information. Good job. It was all safe and accurate. I liked that. Completed in a logical sequence. You followed a line. Earned a 3 on that one easily. Delivered an environmental or safe diving practice message. You were right there on it, and you earned a 2 in this. If we just brought that out to just a bigger picture with a safe diving and an environmental message, it would have kicked it over the edge for me. And if you make sure you take those regulators to a certified technician, they'll make sure that they breathe for you perfectly, so that you don't have any issues while you're diving, because you don't want to run out of gas or you don't want to have a free flow. But just make sure to use that certified tech. You were right on the edge, just a little bit more, and it was right there. So when I say you were really close, there's just a few fine tuning points on here that if you tune those up a little bit more, you'll start knocking them out of the park. I have no doubt in my mind. As we move down, the next dynamic was interactive and presentation, effective use of training aids. And so I want to go down to that one as well. Effective use of training aids. So the candidate should use training aids effectively to reinforce knowledge and understanding. And you were really close. If you just passed those around, you would have had it. Absolutely. So here's where we got it and what we're looking for. Candidate used more than one training aid effectively, and all training aids were related to the topic. So if you just passed them out, they would have been, instead of being props, they would have been training aids. The difference between a prop and, yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, didn't Ken also have a PowerPoint presentation that he started with?
He did. And so the PowerPoint presentation counted for 1 because we referred back to it. There was things I had to read and things I had to see on the PowerPoint presentation that were required for me to understand. If we just taken any of that gear and just passed it around, it would have counted for a second. I encourage, if you got multiple pieces of gear, pass multiple pieces of gear around, because every different piece of gear you use counts as a training aid as long as I can touch it. Another easy one for that as well is class field trips. Hey, now, guys, and you can just pretend, especially in the IE, you don't actually have to get up and say, all right, now what I'm going to have you do is, let's everybody stand up. Let's go in the dive shop and let's go ahead and see if you guys can find 2 different types of delivery systems. I'd be willing to bet if you all looked, you could find 2 different types of delivery systems in that shop. So let's go do that. And so Craig will just, he will buy you donuts if you do that. I'm just kidding. He won't actually buy you donuts, but that's how cool you will be, because Craig's a big guy and I think he eats all his own donuts. So, so as you get that, just add that in. Motivation for the class to participate. Absolutely. I would I would encourage you, SSI is going to a new dynamic where they want more interactive classes. So just as a coaching point, I would develop questions that led students to come up with their own answers, right? And so in your military training, you ever do that where you had a particularly hard-headed person and you ask them a question, and you're looking for this, what is this, or why is it white? So Ken, as I look at this, why do you think it's white? What do you think the advantage to it being white is?
Okay, I can't see what it is, but
oh, gotcha. Okay, I thought you could see the side screen. So as you're looking at it was my iPods, right? And so you start thinking, Ken, why do you think they made the star on the metal for the Broad Star? Why is it brownish in color? And so you try and get them to come up with answers where they answer the question themselves. Ken, why do you think we have the non-decompression limit? Why is that important? And so ask those questions to pull the information out of them instead of doing that. So it's just a coaching point. You earned a 3 in that for class participation. So coaching, I would develop more questions that caused your students to think their way through the situation and come up with an answer. And they don't have to come up with the right answer. That's the great part about it. As long as they come up with an answer that made them think that you didn't give them, that's the win, right? And then you can guide them to where you want to go, because it also leads into ask questions that evaluate a student's knowledge. So if you ask them, hey, why do you think we have the NDL? And they're like, well, because we don't want to build up too much nitrogen, because too much nitrogen in our system can cause the bends. Sweet, they know the answer, even better. And it flows over into ask questions to evaluate students' knowledge. So make sure to ask specific questions on that as well. But you can see how one section can lead to the other, and you can get a twofer on a lot of these if you just build the right question, right? At the end of this, let's go back over to stop screen share percent, share screen, window, adaptive diver. So here's the adaptive diver program again. So I showed you the first 3 slides. Actually, the first 4 slides, just the program name and the first 3 slides. Now, if we go all the way to the end of this, let's see. Maybe go to the end of that section. Sorry, because this is a multi-section presentation. Here we go. So this is slide 23: objectives, value, and main points. I would encourage in doing it in that order as well, straight from the form. It just makes it easier for the evaluator. So the objective today, you should now be able to do this. The value to you was, and the main points we covered was this. And so there's 3 points, 6 points, 9 points, bam. So if we do that, it makes our life a lot easier to evaluate. And like I said, doing those 6 slides, and the funny thing is it's the first 3 slides copied and just a couple words changed overall. So
I'm going to interrupt you for just a minute. So Ken, as part of your slide deck that you had first presented, it looked to me like you had some of those slides. Do you have those slides twice in your slide deck?
In some of them I do. So what happened today is we dumped all of my slides. I had Brett and Levi trying to help me rebuild them. So that first presentation, I put that together in like 15 minutes, getting all the slides. So I had something.
Oh, yeah.
My other one, my next presentation, I actually have, I've got those slides. So I've got, for perfect buoyancy. So it actually says lesson objectives, has them broken out, value to you as a diver, have them broken out. And then we go right into the types of buoyancy compensators. So
sure. Yeah. So the reason why I'm asking is that if we were in a group setting instead of being here in the StreamYard and kind of presenting to each other over the web, right? There's some things that you probably would have had an advantage for, right? Especially looking at like the classroom in our shop. We'd all be sitting around tables. It's a lot easier to say, here, I'm going to pass this regulator set to you. Hey, you know, let's actually take a look physically at this tank, stand up, come over, you tell me what these things are. But a lot of times when we're teaching class and things, that slide deck's still up on the screen until it's there. And you're not asking Benjamin, hey, you know, could you switch back to me so that I can show you this on a camera, or, you know, let's switch back to the slide deck. It's just there so you can flip through it. So I would say that you could possibly argue with Benjamin then, if that was the situation that we were setting in, that, hey, I had that because you could go back to the slide deck and see, here it is. And it helps you remember to cover those points and how to cover them in the presentation.
Yeah, so with this system, is there a way that we can have the slides up and have us up at the same time?
Well, we can do this where I can see you on the, you should be able to see yourself off the left-hand side.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so I think that we get that option though when we tell it to present, because I think it's how you set up our view when we present.
Sure. And I can do like this.
And that's fine. So Nikki, can you see me, Benjamin, and the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we could do it that way. That'll make that a lot easier for me on the next one.
Cool. Awesome.
And I've never actually tried to show somebody regulator sitting on. that was an interesting fight, something to prepare for next time.
Absolutely. So here's the good news is, Ken, you earned a 33 points. And what killed you was the intro and the introduction and the summary. Those two sections absolutely just murdered you. If you'd have done that and you would have, this would have been absolutely a passing. And so I encourage you to try that. And I'm going to send you this review. Let's see, there's really no place to sign. Let's see, saving changes. The other challenge is in watching Nikki. Nikki has done this a lot. She's been my guinea pig on when I did my ITC, she was my guinea pig on stuff. When I did my AIT, she was my guinea pig on a lot of stuff. When I did my ITCs, she was my guinea pig on stuff. So she's been a guinea pig a lot. And she's been a guinea pig to some pretty detail-oriented people as well. So like Janine is an international training director. She was a guinea pig for her. She was a guinea pig for Gary Boyer, who's a great IT, and he's very detail-oriented as well. So as I learned how to do this, Nikki learned to do this as well. So just be aware as you got to go through this on the presentation portion. Nikki's got this pretty much dialed in. Where she needs the help is the I just lost everything.
Where I need help is water skills.
Yep. And I apologize. I lost your evaluation form. I just had a critical crash in Acrobat. So if that's okay, we'll call that a mulligan and go from there. So dang it. Yeah, I just relaunched.
Recover it if you reopen Adobe.
I just reopened it and I lost all my scoring pieces. It just kept his name and so I guess I'll use that form again for his next presentation. Dang it. That bites. Oh well. Well, good news is that slate's been wiped clean. And we get to start again. So I'm going to start one for Nikki here. And if you would, do you have a academic evaluation sheet?
Yeah, I've got mine up. Why is this?
Cool.
I'm going to try and re-add. My slides went away for the next one. So, well, I'll play with that while trying to get that while she does hers.
Perfect. And prepare a document. Well, the good news is you got a mulligan on the first one. So, and that's what we'll call it. We'll just call it a mulligan, and it's all good. And Nikki, what are you presenting to us today?
I am going to present overexpansion industries, overexpansion injuries.
That is a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ken, I'll warn you on this one. With guys like you and I, this subject can be a rabbit hole in open water. Be very careful of this one because it's one that you can get passionate about really easily, and you can go way too far for these poor students, and you can definitely scare the crap out of them. So, I had to pull myself back quite a bit on this one, and it's a subject you'll get overall. So just be aware it's an open water rabbit hole. It's a great one for stress and rescue, and a great one for science and diving. You can in science and diving, you can go really deep down the rabbit hole with science and diving if you want to, but that's what it's made for. But in open water, just be careful of how deep down that rabbit hole you allow yourself to go. I've gone pretty deep down the rabbit hole. I had a class with several doctors in it, and it was like, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know about that." And we got in this great discussion. The problem is there were several non-doctors in the course as well, and they were like, So, all right, Nikki, I have 656. So 657, whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Welcome back, everyone. I am really excited to be here again this evening to share a fairly scary topic, but hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll be better informed and understand where we can find some more information. So once again, I'm Nikki. I've been diving since 2015. I will caveat and say I am not a trained medical professional. So what you're getting is knowledge that I have gained from taking my open water diver course, science of diving, introduction to deco procedures, and general knowledge. So there's tons of information out there about these, the topics that we're going to cover tonight, but hopefully this is just going to give you a brief overview as to what they are. So our objective tonight is that we're going to be able to list 4 possible overexpansion injuries, identify the most serious of these, describe the cause, symptoms, treatment, and prevention for each. So let's talk a little bit about why this would be of a value to us. So the value for this topic is that those pressure injuries, or the overexpansion injuries, are most of the time happen on ascent and can be some of the most serious while diving. So the key to prevention is knowledge, which is what we're doing, dive planning, proper breathing, proper equipment, and sufficient skills. So I'm going to jump in here. These are our main points, and I'm going to stay on this slide for quite a while because this is going to be what we're talking about and covering. So I just want to kind of key into a few things. You're going to kind of come across some things as we talk about these, both in prevention and treatment. And the other thing too is to remember they're not, while they're serious injuries, they're highly unlikely to occur and rarely seen in well-trained divers. So the first one of these that we're going to talk about is arterial gas embolism. Either Benjamin or Ken, have either of you heard about an arterial gas embolism before?
Yes, I've heard of it.
What in your own kind of words, what is it?
So a gas embolism is the formation of gases in a clump somewhere in your body, in your tissue, that can expand or cause blockages.
Absolutely. So this is one of the most serious dive injuries that can happen, and it's caused by overpressurization and the rupture of the alveoli. So those little kind of microscopic things within our lungs that hold that air, right? So that air, just like you said, enters into our circulation, and it could potentially go to either our heart or brain. That's bad, right? As we come up within the water column, those bubbles do what? Okay.
By the trailer. Sorry, I just got somebody just walked in on me.
That's okay.
Could you repeat that? I apologize.
Absolutely. So as we come up in the water column, what happens to air as we come up? Like if we watch as we exhale bubbles, what happens to them as they come up and break the surface?
So they expand.
Absolutely. So they get bigger. So if those bubbles that we've got that are left our lungs and enter into our heart and brain expand, that's bad, right? And just like you said, they can eventually cause a blockage, potentially within the brain tissue, cause damage. So some of the symptoms for this are that so the most obvious symptom is we're going to end up with unconsciousness before the diver surfaces or within 4 to 6 minutes of surfacing. We're going to want to treat that diver before they become unconscious and within 6 minutes if possible of that embolism. How are we going to know that that's there? I don't know, because once again, I'm not a trained medical personnel. So we're going to do our best to put them on oxygen and get them to a treatment chamber as quickly as we can. So we could also experience loss of motor control, headaches, vertigo, and visual, auditory, speech abnormalities. Some of those we're going to be able to see with water. Some of them we won't. Other symptoms are going to be, it's going to act a lot like a stroke. Similar to a stroke, we're getting that blockage someplace that's going to cause slurred speech, confusion, weakness in one or more of our limbs, as well as muscle motion or coordination deficits. So our second one that we're going to treat or that we're going to talk about is a pneumothorax. Benjamin, do you know what a pneumothorax is?
I do, but I'm not a student.
Okay. Well, I failed to ask. Do you know what a pneumothorax is, and would you describe it for me?
Pneumothorax. No, I don't know what that means.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about it. So a pneumothorax is our second most serious lung injury, and that's going to be where the air escapes from our lungs and moves between the lungs and the rib cage. And a lot of times that's going to cause a collapsed lung and put pressure on our heart and affect our circulation. So this is one of the ones that the movies love to do, right? It's the guy that takes the knife or whatever and slices the guy's, in between his ribs and shoves a straw or something in there, and then all of a sudden they can breathe again. That's what a pneumothorax is. So signs and symptoms of it are going to be chest pain. We're going to have difficulty breathing. We're going to have weakness, potentially cyanosis, so we're going to turn blue around the lips and potentially the nail beds, and then unconsciousness. So this is definitely going to have problems if our lung is collapsed, particularly on breathing. I know I'm moving kind of quickly, but any questions about a pneumothorax?
No.
Okay. What about a subcutaneous emphysema? I know all these fun words to get to say, right? Have you ever heard of that before?
Yes. So it's a deep tissue blockage in airways.
Yes, really similar to that, right? So that once again, our air is going to escape the lungs, and it's going to travel, and it's going to end up around the area for our heart, and potentially end up along our throat into the windpipe and trachea area. It's going to cause kind of a bulging around that collarbone and neck. So this one, the signs and symptoms are a crackling sensation around the affected area, so kind of like Rice Krispies. Our voice is going to change due to the swelling in our throat, and then it's going to, once again, we're going to have difficulty breathing. So the last one that we have is mediastinal emphysema. This one, the air is going to escape from our lungs into the heart area around our heart again, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on the heart and the blood vessels. We're going to have chest pains, difficulty breathing, weakness, cyanosis, and unconsciousness. So with all of these, some of the preventions that we have are one of the things that we do in part of open water the very first night that we came in taking class, and what we should do prior to every dive class that we take, is to fill out a medical form. If we have any sort of history, we may have to go visit a doctor and say, okay, am I safe to dive? One of the things that they're going to check is our lungs and our heart to make sure that things are operating properly and we've got that full lung capacity, right? So, Ken, I'm sure you've probably heard this, but what do you think the number one rule of diving could be?
Always breathe.
Absolutely. So if we breathe continuously through the dive and we don't hold our breath, how likely is it, do you think, that we could experience one of these overexpansion injuries?
Oh, it's very likely.
Definitely could be very likely, but if we're continually breathing, that probability is going to decrease. As long as we're coming up within the water column, we're exhaling normally, breathing in normally, we're not going to build up that overpressurization within our lungs. So other things to keep in mind is to don't dive when we're congested, right? Any sort of sinus things that are going on within our nasal passages and things are going to make it harder to breathe. One of the recommendations that we also have is to not smoke. That smoking can limit the capacity in our lungs and our ability to be able to oxygenate properly. So one of the other key things is to use the right equipment. Just earlier, we heard a presentation about our delivery system. I have several different regulators, and I will tell you that I've become a little bit of a princess. My very favorite regulators to dive with are our Apex XTX 50 set. Part of the reason why I like the Apex set that I have is that it breathes the same no matter the pressure within my tank. And it delivers a really great flow. I don't feel like I have to work super hard to breathe it. The dive shop's got some. We can certainly wander over to the regulators and I can show you and we can check them out and things, but they're one that I would recommend. I have been diving on rental regulators, and sometimes you get the quality as to what they want to put in their rental set, and it's not always the best, and it's not always in great condition. So if we have our own equipment and are that great regulator, right? It's a good brand. It's one that we keep serviced and bring it into the shop and make sure that it's well maintained. It's going to continue to work in our behalf and be good for us. So the other thing to keep in mind is to take our time to ascend slowly. We're going to ascend at a rate of no faster than what, Ken?
As we're doing it, I'm having a hard time hearing you. You're echoey.
I apologize, probably because I'm upstairs and Benjamin's downstairs. But how fast do we want to ascend as we're coming up from a dive?
30 feet per minute.
Perfect. Yeah. So if we're ascending slower than that, we should be able to properly breathe through the process, and that's going to help us prevent those overexpansion injuries. So first aid treatment, there's 4 steps that we want to do. We want to treat for shock. We want to administer oxygen if we're qualified for it. We want to stand by to do CPR if needed. And then we want to make sure that we contact medical personnel and get them the diver to a recompression chamber as quickly as possible. So those are all big, scary topics, and we've kind of briefly touched on a lot of things tonight, but I would really encourage, we've got a science of diving class coming up this Thursday, and it's a great way, or next Thursday. It's a great way to be able to learn some more of the science behind diving and looking a little bit deeper into these injuries and the prevention of them. So if that's something that you're interested in, we can settle up with Ashley and get you signed up for that next class. I think it's like $150 or something for the information. It's probably one of the best dive classes that I've taken. So once again, our main points we talked about tonight is the most serious of the overexpansion injuries of being the arterial gas embolism, We also talked about the neothorax, the subcutaneous emphysema, and the mediastinal emphysema, as well as signs and symptoms for those and treatment of it. So once again, our objective was to be able to list the 4 possible lung overexpansion injuries, identify the most serious, describe the cause, symptoms, treatment, and prevention for each. And our value for the topic is that those injuries occur on ascent, and they're some of the most serious in diving. But our key to prevention is proper knowledge, dive planning, proper breathing, proper equipment, and sufficient diving skill. So thank you very much for participating. Benjamin, you're on mute.
I said nicely done, and Ken, so you and I are going to score together. You have your scoring sheet?
I do.
Fantastic. Do you have a scoring sheet with criteria by chance?
Yeah.
Even better. Good job. Just in case you didn't, I have one that we can put on the screen so all of us can see it together. So, introduction. Did she define the objective in measurable terms? The candidate should state all objectives that are directly related to their specific topic using measurable terminology. Candidate clearly stated in measurable terms all objectives related to the topic.
I think that was 3.
Okay. Did she express it in a measurable term? Nikki, go back to your first slide for me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Well, so my first slide.
Your second slide. Sorry.
Well, here I got to present again. So my second slide is value. So my first slide is the objective. And it says that we should be able to list. And I did state that by the end of tonight, we would be able to do this.
Okay, I didn't hear that part. I heard objective. Our objective today was, and you read through this, which is great, list 4 lung overexposure injuries.
Then I did not add at the end of the presentation.
Exactly. And so in that, you earned a 2. What was the measurable? You just had to add that little bit. It's just a tweak, but it's just a small tweak as well. Now, guys, as we go through this, at the end of this presentation tonight, you're going to be able to list the 4 possible lung overexpansion injuries. Identify some of the most So just make sure you put that in direct terms, because remember, you're speaking to a new student. This is what they need to understand and do. So just be super clear on that, and that'll move that score up to a 3 on that. So hopefully that helps you, Ken, as well, to kind of see what we're looking for. Value of the topic, and it should be able to state a clear need to know, as well as how the information will be relevant during the student's training and practical application. Candidate stated a clear need to know, as well as how this information will be applicable during the student's training and practical experience. How would you score that, Ken?
I'd score that as a 3.
You pulled it right from the book, so it's kind of a, if you steal right from the book, it's hard to not get a 3 in that category, right? Provided overview with main points outlined. Candidate provided all main points in a clear and logical sequence outlined in the instructor manual. That's what it did. And I focus on what it takes to get a 3. If she didn't do that, then we look at a 2. Or did candidate provided all main points, but they were not presented in a logical sequence? How do you score that?
Yeah, I think that would be a 3 too, because she talked about the main points. They were in a logical sequence, and I think they were the same. I don't know about the instructor manual because I don't have that in front of me, but
sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. So overall, I agree. She earned a 3 in that category. Knowledge. Practical application of the knowledge. The candidate should use real diving examples to relate the main points of the topic to the skills the student will use during their training or practical diving experience. Candidate gave practical examples that were specifically related to the main points and the skills the students will use during their training or practical diving experience. So this is a tricky one. This is a rough one to get. Um, and I gave you a coaching point on this one, Nikki. Of you said at one point, how would I know I'm not an expert in this? And then you gave me all the practical application of how would I know an AGE. So
But
you gave me all the information. You said I'm not a pro, and I wouldn't know because I'm not a pro. But then you told me it was great, so I would encourage not saying that.
But I look at it going, each one of those topics has so much more stuff I'm sure that can be covered under it. So
absolutely,
I would agree that I would not score myself on a 3 with this one as well. But I think that the hard part with this one is the real world diving examples, right? I haven't seen anybody with any of those. So, and maybe that's a better thing to say is that in real world diving examples, like I guess I've probably heard of somebody who's had each one of those, but I'm not a medical expert. And what I'm gaining is purely just from the diving classes that I've taken. So in my mind, being a professional would be more of being the medical professional who has a deeper knowledge to this. But I would say that the practical application wasn't there.
Absolutely. No, I understand that completely. And where you got hit on that was not the practical application knowledge, because very few people have had to deal with this. But one of the examples was negative. I don't know. And at this point in the student's knowledge, you are the relative expert.
Yeah,
and you gave them. And the funny thing is, you gave all the experience and you gave all the information of here's what happens with AGE. You get brain right? All the fog, disorientation, vertigo, nausea. Those are all. I mean, this you're telling them exactly. This is a potential AGE, but you're saying I don't know, and so it becomes a negative example. So in that category, you earned a 2 with a coaching point of how would you know? You gave all the information for it. Just cut that I don't know portion out, and you had it. Equipment, sales, and counseling. How would you score yourself in that one, Nick?
Would you scroll down to that one?
Be happy to. Sorry. Candidates should show students why equipment ownership is vital to their long-term diving commitment and how ownership increases their comfort and confidence. Candidate gave specific examples of equipment use that related to the topic and delivered a clear value and motivate to purchase.
So I guess I would score myself as a 3 because I did state that a specific regulator and why I like it and what the value for that was. So hopefully there was some motivation with that to purchase.
Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, she covered it. She didn't come right out and say specifically, give examples of kind of one or the other to buy, but she hit it.
And so, Nikki, my encouragement to you and the coaching point for at this side of it is come out and say, I earned a 3 in this instead of I feel like. So remember, this is the idea with this is that we're not guessing. We're not feeling. There's no feelings or guesswork or opinion involved in this. It's all candidate introduced and created a value for a specific,
That's the wrong one. It's the one
example of equipment use. You talked about I'm a princess and I love my XTX 50 because it breathes the same at the surface as it does at depth. On the topic and the clear value to motivate to purchase. This is a great regulator, and I've been diving for years. So to earn a 2 in that, it would have to be candidate gave specific examples of equipment use that didn't relate to the topic. We're talking about breathing. We're talking about an AGE. We're talking about things like that. Breathing things. So these are specific to the candidate. So this is a good example. As long as you give good examples and related and a clear motivation to purchase, you got it. Because dropping down, you gave specific examples of equipment, but in this case, we're talking about breathing injuries, and you're talking about a BC.
Sure.
So it's one of those areas that it's hard not to get a 3 as long as you're specific, right? Specific, and here's how to get it, and here's why you want it. Con Ed, science of diving, I had that. Candidate introduced and created value. Science of diving is a perfect one for this. I really like science of diving for the expansion injuries. because it does exactly that, right? We don't have a medical, well, take the AGE course. We don't have that, right? We're not doctors. There's not an EMT course. Another one in this that's a really easy one as you guys start thinking about this that pairs nicely with this is React Right.
Sure.
So
yeah, that was one of the
React
other ones I was thinking about is stress and rescue. But in order to get stress and rescue, you have to have React Right, which is more the medical side of it.
Exactly. So, Ken and Nikki, as you guys go through and start thinking about Con Ed, I like to think about this just like making dinner, right? There's not a lot of times you serve steak and Jello on the same plate, right? It just doesn't go, right? You think steak and asparagus, thinking steak and potatoes, things like that. So as you pair these up, think about things that actually go together. Equipment techniques, I think you could probably make a case for that, but ice diving would be really inappropriate for this one. It just doesn't. I think you'd have a real hard time tying those together. Or river diving would be another inappropriate one for this. So as you think about that, think about how you'd pair this with something else, and why would I, if I'm at this point talking about this subject, what would be my motivation to take something else, and what would be really a nice hand and glove fit with that. So again, you earned a 3 in that science of diving. Ken, safe and accurate information on the topic. Candidates should demonstrate a dive professional level knowledge and state accurate and safe information on this. Candidate demonstrate extensive knowledge while providing accurate and safe information. Was she a 3?
Yes.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Obviously, Nikki knows, has listened to this and talked about this class before and heard it a few times. And so it's easy. Completed in a logical sequence. She followed the slides. That's an easy 3, right? Delivered an environmental or safe diving practice message. Now, this is one of those areas I encourage you strongly, change that or to and. But in this, she hit 2 separate examples. Candidate gave environmental or safe diving practice message that was appropriate to the scope of the topic. I heard always breathe, and she talked to you about slow ascents. So in this, it was a clear and easy earning of a 3 on that one as well. Here's a tough one. What are some things that you could have shown or just allude and said you had around training aids?
Yeah, so I apologize because one of the things that I was thinking about with this one is like anticipating that you have a class who either one hasn't done the homework or maybe hasn't gotten into it very far. So I was going to actually have us open up the SSI app, go to the open water diver class and where the information, all of these were, so that they could either follow along or glean information that I didn't cover, and I didn't do that. So I earned a 1 because I only used 1 training aid.
Absolutely. So, but here's the thing. Candidate attempted to use at least 1 training aid and or aids were not used effectively, or candidate used at least 1 training aid effectively and aids were not specific to the subject. So in terms of that,
apologize.
That 1,
I'll bump myself to no, I'll bump myself to a 2.
Okay. So I'm not here to be hard at all. And I don't want you guys to think that, Benjamin's very, very strict. It's not that at all. I'm not strict at all. I believe firmly that there's no emotion or it's not subjective. This is what it is. And I'll work hard to always make sure that I'm very by the line, by the letter on this. So effective use of training aids, an easy one would have been, hey, I love this XTX50. Hey guys, why don't you go ahead and pass this around? You could feel it, how nice and heavy it is, how well built it is. And so that would have been a really easy one as well. But Ken, one of my favorites and one of SSI favorites for training aids, have them open the app and show you. Make sure they don't just, hey, go to your app real quick. Hey, go to your app and show me in this, or show me that, or read me this, right? Make sure that they're doing something that you can prove that you have everybody do it. That SSI loves that. So,
which quite frankly, Ken would have gave the perfect segue into that, right? When I asked him about one of the, I can't remember, I think it was the mediastinal emphysema or the subcutaneous emphysema. And I asked him if he knew what it was, and he said no. I'm like, okay, well, let's go to the app. Let's go find where it is in the open water diver manual. That it would have been a perfect segue into having a second training aid and then helping them be able to use that.
Exactly. So the extra training aids aren't hard. I do know some instructor trainers and some instructor evaluators that have a rule that they want to see at least 5 different training aids per presentation. That doesn't fit with the standards. While it's a good rule of thumb to say, okay, use this, use that, make sure you cover them all, and you've done a good presentation, and certainly you get kudo points. But in terms of on the form, it doesn't add, right? It's 2. The next one down is motivated the class to participate. The candidate should encourage all students to participate in the presentation by being part of the practical application session. In example, discussions, workshops, and field trips. Think pair share is another one. So candidate effectively kept all students motivated and involved during the entire presentation. Ken,
Yeah, I mean, I felt engaged, and she kept bringing stuff in. Now, just a quick aside here. When we're doing these presentations, because I didn't know is it best just to always give the other person the right answers, or to say the I don't knows?
You can do both. Whatever you feel that it be the best worst student, non-knowledgeable student you could be, right? At this point, you don't have to. You can give correct answers. You can give non-correct answers. It's there's not really a guideline or a standard on that one way or the other.
Okay, because I didn't want to do any gotchas or anything like that. It was just a
no, it's fine. And that's a great question. There's not really a standard on that. And so if you want to give the wrong answer, it gives the instructor a chance to, hey, that's great, and work through the positive reinforcement. But there's not a standard where I can say, okay, well, good job on this or good job on that. I can't score you plus or minus either way. But the instructor, it does give the instructor opportunity to do that. And I've done that. I've been a good student where I knew all the answers, and I've been a bad student where I knew some of the answers, right? So there's not really a standard or worry one way or the other. But that's a great question. I like that you're thinking that. So and that's the key to this is think your way through it. Here's one thing I want you guys to kind of notice on this, and it's going to take you guys to that next level, is candidates should engage all the students to participate in presentations by being part of a practical application session. Ken, what do you think we mean by a practical application session?
Practical application. This one's difficult for practical applications.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, always be a little more generous on this one for this type. But practical applications are hands-on, taking them in, having them go through equipment. If you're doing something that's equipment intensive, take them into the shop and say, okay, so we talked about these 3 different things. Let's see who can find it first, and maybe even make it a game where you give out a candy bar or something. So whoever finds the right item first.
So if there's, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so one of the ways that if it wasn't like a one-on-one class, right? If we had multiple people or multiple students, because a lot of times in open water, we've got 4 to 8 students, because that's within standards and things. We could certainly break them into like groups of 2, give each one of them a topic and say, okay, go find this in the SSI open water diver manual. And then let's circle back and let's talk and have each group of 2 present one of the topics. That would be a practical application session. Or
other sessions, other things you can do
would be the quiz questions that you pop up and say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, what is this, or whatever.
So it gives us there's 7 different types of practical application sessions that you can do. Open discussions, small group discussions, polls. So for example, with you 2, who thinks that an open discussion where I said, okay, here's the topic, here's the question, discuss among yourselves. By a show of hands, who thinks that would be a practical application session?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So as you go through this, what I might suggest on that, Ken and Nikki, as you go through this, say, okay, so let's have a quick open discussion. Who here has, I want you guys to discuss among yourselves, has ever heard of an AGE? You, Ken, you, Nikki, you 2 talk about that. Have you ever heard of an AGE? And if you have, what was your experience with that? And then let them talk among themselves. And that's kind of a rough example, because hopefully nobody's had the opportunity to hear about an AGE, but or Nikki, Ken, I want you guys to talk among yourselves. Give me an idea. What are some of the medical things that scare you about diving that you've heard of, or something's happened? Let's just talk about that for a minute. And you can go sort of like that. And that's kind of a rough example, just quickly off the cuff, but those are easy ones. Or by show of hands, who has heard of a metasimul emphysema? That's another idea. So, or think, pair, share. Those are easy ones. Workshop. Okay, what I want you both to do is I want you to both to go into AGE and write down two symptoms that you think could happen on an AGE. So read through the book, find me two, and write those down, and we'll reconvene in 2 minutes. So easy. Those are easy ones to do as well. So think about that as you guys start moving into this motivated class that participate. Think about those practical application sessions that you can build into this, like think, pair, share, open discussions, workshops, field trips, by a show of hands, and some way to motivate and get people involved and get them moving, right? You did a good job, and with this, you earned a 3 and effectively kept all students motivated and involved during the session. But to take it to the next level and make your classes even better, start thinking about how I can get them moving and thinking as well. The next question was ask questions to evaluate the student's knowledge. This was an easy 3 earned. Candidate asked at least one question to each student that effectively evaluated the student's understanding and knowledge. You asked, have you heard of this? I think it was metasimul emphysema. Have you heard of this? And if he popped up and be like, well, obviously you have. But oh no, I hadn't heard of that one. So it gave you a chance to teach. And with this one, asking their knowledge, this is a great one, especially in the class. If you get that student that has read through the entire book, has gone snorkeling, or maybe done some scuba experiences before, maybe there's things that you don't have to cover nearly as in depth, so you can focus on the things that they don't know. I love this, especially teaching tech. I'll go through and I'll question as I go through the process. And what I find is a lot of times my students have watched previous videos, read other books. I had one student that came through that had read Deco for Divers. He was a NAUI instructor, was very much on the discussion boards about all things tech. And so there was a lot of things that I touched on, but I didn't have to go into depth. And I was able to keep going until I found things that he didn't know so that I could teach him, right? So my class was more effective. We can go into much more knowledge on that. Summary, I see that you earned a 3 in all 3 categories, so that's an easy 9 points. So as we get down to this, Ken, accomplish objectives. So Ken should provide sufficient information to meet the stated objectives. Kennedy provides sufficient information to meet all the objectives related to the topic. Did she do that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Accurate terminology, impression, speaking ability, mannerisms. Were there anything that threw you off as she was talking?
No. It was very clear what we talked about.
This is an easy one to argue too, right here, Ken. So if you're low on points and if you pass, just take the pass. Don't argue points with the evaluator. All it does is tick him off, and it never works out in your favor, right?
Right.
So if he says if your minimum score is 36 and you got a 40, you're like, I can do better than that, and I should have done it. Just take the win and move on, right? There's no extra cool points that you'll get from SSI for getting a higher than passing score, right? Certainly you want to do the best you can, but here's the interesting one. Candidates should conduct the topic within 20% of the allotted time. Now, Nikki passed on this one, but there are certain subjects where they can't be covered in the allotted amount of time. You give them 10 minutes, and it's this deep subject, and we're talking about how to right? And it can't be done in 10 minutes, not effectively. So candidate provided an adequate amount of information to cover the topic within the allotted time. But let's look at a 2-pointer there. Candidate continually repeated themselves, or included unnecessary information that caused the presentation to be too long. Or to get a 1, candidate did not cover enough information during the presentation to adequately cover the topic, which caused the presentation to be too short. Candidate was ineffective with their use of time completely. So if I'd given Nikki 5 minutes on this and she'd gone to 10 minutes, that'd have been 50% too much time, right? But would she be guilty of a 2 or a 1 on this? Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't. Yeah.
No, and so this is a tricky one, and I want to kind of point that out. As long as you didn't repeat yourself, continually repeat yourself, or include if Nikki had gone off, if she had 5 minutes and she took 10 on this, and she'd gone off on some wild tangent about going to Antarctica and seeing whale seals and leopard seals and and then talked about the color of the boat and the meal she had beforehand. Unnecessary information, too much, right? As we went through this, but she didn't do that at all, and she covered all the information. So the candidate she covered enough information during the presentation to adequately cover the topic. So she can't be guilty of a 1 because it was adequate, right? And she didn't repeat herself or include unnecessary information, so she can't be guilty of a 2. So really, in my opinion, this is a super easy one to argue, as long as you make sure cover the correct information without going over and unnecessary information with this as well. So just kind of be aware. This is one of those ones that it's easy to argue, and even though it says within 20% of a lot of time, as long as you're careful and don't repeat yourself and you cover it accurately without unnecessary information, it's a real easy one to get a 3 in. So Nikki, I show your final scores of 51 on that one.
Sweet.
Where you earned 2s was the measurable objective at the beginning, the knowledge and skills, and you gave a negative example. You earned a 2 there, and effective use of training aids, you earned a 2 there. But other than that, that was a deduction of 3 points, so you earned a 51. Which, if you look at the evaluator standards, if I can ever get there, here we go. This is the standards that we go by. Minimum score is a 36 for AIT, is 45, and for an IT, you need to score a 50. So this was an easy 51 for me. I think we all agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. Good job, Nikki. As always, it's obvious you've paid attention to the other 200 times that I've made you give presentations.
Thanks,
So
I appreciate it.
So I'm going to try and review and send that to you. It's on the last page. I just sent that email, and good news. It's just a moment. Good. It's sent. Yay. It didn't crash. So that is a huge bonus that it didn't crash. All right. Ken, does that help seeing Nikki do one?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, very well done.
Yeah. So there we go. Here. All right. Well, good news is I've got a presentation, a form ready for you, Ken. And let's see. Add to stage. Sorry. Stop screen share. For buoyancy. There we go. Let's find the one I had before that we liked. There we go. Where is Ken? Let's see. We'll go start talking to Ken and see if it pops you in there.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see myself. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
I can hear him, but I can't see him. I see me too.
Okay. I'm gonna go back.
There we go.
Give me a second.
Now my slides are gone.
Yep, I'm working on that. There we go. On here, work here. There we go. Now I can see you and I can see the slides. You should be able to see yourself on the left-hand side.
Okay. Yeah, I can see me. And I can see
right. Perfect buoyancy. This is always a good one. And
yes.
be, let's see, 8 to 12 minutes. I've got time on deck of 7:39. So we'll say 7:40. I'm excited now that you've been coached and seen it. I anticipate a 54 on this, Ken.
All right.
Go for it.
Okay, so perfect buoyancy. For this portion of our perfect buoyancy class, we're going to talk about the buoyancy compensator system. And our objectives today are to be able to, as students, I want you to be able to list the components of your buoyancy control system, understand the function of the buoyancy control system, and identify the individual components of the system. So for a diver, you need to understand the types of buoyancy compensators. And why do you think you need to understand the different types? Are there different types, and what do they do? Nikki?
I think that there's different types. I don't know. The only one that I've seen is the ones that we've used so far in class.
Okay. Now, for recreational diving, there's typically 3 different types of buoyancy compensators out there, and so we'll go into those here in a moment. I also want you to be able to identify the different types of inflators, how to use them, and understand the value of perfect buoyancy. So the purpose of a BC is to simply provide positive buoyancy at the surface, neutral buoyancy at depth. We also need to be able to bring an unconscious diver to the surface in an emergency, and we want to be able to streamline and reduce our drag. Not only do we want to reduce our drag, we want to reduce what we're dragging on the bottom and prevent that if at all possible. So I've actually lived through a lot of these different issues. Bringing an unconscious diver to the surface. We had an emergency a few years back. I was the first diver on scene, and then Brett, who you guys know, he was the second diver on scene. We had a guy panic. He was disoriented, so he kept trying to swim up and then swim back down. So he'd swim 5 feet up, swim 5 feet back down, and he was struggling the entire time trying to inflate his buoyancy compensator and trying to dump weight, both of which he was unable to do because he wasn't familiar with his buoyancy compensator. If it wasn't for a couple other divers there to help him out, he probably would have drowned that day. So this is a really important piece of subject matter. Not only is it going to keep you safe, we're also going to prevent and reduce a lot of environmental damage from bumping to the bottom and dragging our gear on the bottom of the water as we're diving. So the 3 primary types of buoyancy compensators are the adjustable BC, the back flotation wing, and jacket BCs. So in East Idaho, we don't see a lot of jacket BCs. And actually, I went around the dive shop and I didn't see one. And that's the one over on the far right, the number 3. So I have a couple of them here, and these are really nice ones, and they're available here at the dive shop. So this one is one of the adjustable BCs. It's got integrated weights in it, so it's really easy to pull out. And as you can see, the inflation portion on the back here, sorry, get it in the frame, is just like number 1. You have a pocket that kind of goes around. It's real comfortable. I don't use these personally, but I know a lot of divers who do that love them, and they're great. Over here, this one's my personal BC. I use this one for travel. Can you see? I don't know how well you can see. Nikki, can you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. What style do you think this one is? Do you think this is a 1 or a 2 or a 3?
It looks more like a 2 to me.
That's exactly right. So this is a back inflate wing. This is this Eagle covert. It's really lightweight. This is a travel BC. We use these a lot. A lot of us, when we go on trips with the dive shop, we take these with us because they're really light, they're really comfortable, they're really easy. So I'd also encourage you to go on trips with us. We get a lot of go to great fun places. We go to Roatan a couple times a year. Went to Fiji not too long ago. I got a fun little tattoo when we were in Fiji. So when you travel, pick a light BC to go with you. And then the other types are really good for some of the more rough water and stuff like that we have here in East Idaho. So there's 5 main components you're going to find on most BCs. So I don't know if you can see the numbers real well here. So number one, this is the adjustable strap. And so that's your shoulder strap. You pull those down, tightens up the BC on you, makes it so it slide around and move, which is really important. If your BC is slipping and sliding on you while you're underwater, you're not going to be able to maintain your buoyancy. You're going to be really uncomfortable and not have a good time. So number two is your inflator hose. So you've got your inflate button and your dump button, and you can see here that you've got a hose hooked to the first stage of your regulator. Number three is a dump valve. So you can dump all the air out of your BC. Don't rely on the picture. Every BC is a little bit unique. You might have 2, 3 dump valves, or you might just have one. It depends on the style. So get to know your gear real well. Number four is your cummerbund and waist strap. A lot of more modern BCs have a Velcro cummerbund and then an adjustable waist strap to cinch it down tight. And then on this BC, this is number 5 is your weight pocket. So you can pull the weights out, drop them in an emergency. There's ripcord style, like on the Ziegel stuff, which is my other BC. I dive a Ziegel Ranger LTD. I've had mine. My Ziegel Ranger is older than both of my sons. I love it. It's been great. But one of the advantages of that BC is it's a real easy way to dump your weights in an emergency. Hopefully you'll never have one, but if you do, they're great. So weight systems. So from the pictures that we saw earlier, those BCs have integrated weights. The two that I showed you, integrated weight systems. And then you have, so you have your pocket weight integration system. You also have weight belts. Weight belts have come a long, long way over the last few years. So these weight belts. You have a bunch of individual pockets, so you can stick your weights in there, whether or not they're hard or soft weights. These are a fairly comfortable belt. And with all the pockets going all the way around you, you can adjust your balance a little bit better than you can with some weight systems. Also, when it comes to your weights, you want to have something that's really comfortable and fits in your BC. So if your pockets are so full that if you have to pull your weight out to do an adjustment while you're underwater, but you can't get the weight pocket back in, you're going to have a difficult time underwater and controlling your buoyancy. So this is a 4-pound weight bag. The dive shop just got a whole bunch of these in different sizes, different weights. So these are real comfortable. They're real soft. They don't poke into you like some of the harder weight systems that are out there. So safety and control. So your BC, we talked about the inflator. So you push your inflator, it adds air to your BC. Then it's got another button that dumps the air out of your BC. So there's 2 primary types of inflators. So we have the regular one here, and this is what I dive with my Ranger. So this has only got an inflate and a deflate button. And then this is the spare air, secondary air source type of inflator. So again, we have the inflate, we have the deflate, but this one we can also breathe off of while we're underwater if we are in an emergency situation. So Nikki, when you inflate your BC, when you were going through your open water class, did you have any difficulties adding too much air or dumping too much air as you were trying to stay neutrally buoyant for your open water class?
Absolutely. It's like that, we'd go down and it was like, oh, I've added too much air. And then all of a sudden I'm floating too far up. So then you dump all of it out. And then all of a sudden I'm laying on the rocks. So then you add more air. And once again, you're going up. And yeah, that was a challenge.
And that's one of the things that we're going to really streamline for you as part of this course. But the one thing I want everybody to remember is when it comes to your inflator, less is more. Don't hit your inflator and hold it and then hope that that's going to adjust you right. Bump it, add little bits of air at a time, and when you have to dump air, dump little bits of air at a time unless you're rapidly, uncontrollably ascending. If you're uncontrollably ascending, you can use your dump valves, you can hold your inflator, but less is more. Just do a little bit, bump it, and you're going to find that you're going to have a lot easier time controlling your buoyancy if you just do a little bit at a time. So let's talk about care and maintenance of your BCs. So just like every part of our total diving system, you have to do maintenance on your BC. So after each dive, you have to drain and rinse them. Why would you have to rinse the inside of your bladder?
Well, it seems like when we did the open water course at the end of our dive, we'd end up with water in the bladder. So I would
Yep.
assume that if you're diving in places with salt water or maybe in not very nice fresh water, you're going to want all of that stuff to get out of the bladder so that you can maintain good equipment.
Absolutely. And all the stuff that comes into your BC from the water, because every time you hit your deflate button, as the air is going out, you are pulling some water in. So every time you dive, have you noticed that when you get out of the water, you've got some water in your BC?
Yes.
Yep. So every time. So different chemicals, different bacteria, salt water, anything like that can break down your bladder in your BC. So cleaning it is a really important part. So again, all BCs are a little bit different. One of the things I like about the Ziegel products that you can get here is on your inflator hose itself, you can take the inflator off. They just thread off. And then this threads into a garden hose. So if you pull your valves off and then put a garden hose to it, you can run water through it, get it thoroughly rinsed out. It's a great system for keeping for helping you clean your BC. So we definitely want to make sure we don't have any buildup of salt deposits and things like that inside our BCs. And then when we're done, before we store it, before we put it on a hanger, we want to partially inflate it. Why would we partially inflate them?
I don't know. So I guess the bladder doesn't stick together?
That's exactly right. The bladders inside the BCs will actually stick together. So if they're wet and they stick together, especially if you've got a little bit of sand or a little bit of slime from the rivers or the lakes, they'll stick together. And then when you inflate it, sometimes they'll stick together really, really well. That's not very common, but you want to be able to, when you inflate it, if it's stuck together, it can cause undue wear and shorten the life of the bladder in your BC. So after you've done this course, there are several of the classes that you can take. One of them that I like is the diver stress and rescue. So as you've gone through, you've done your perfect buoyancy, you've done some of the other classes. This is one to keep an eye on and watch for. You learn a lot of good skills on how to help people. If you want to run into a situation like Brett and I did in Yellowstone a few years back, this stuff is real important. One of the things both of us were trying to do when we were working with that distressed diver was reach his inflator or reach his weights, and we just couldn't do it. He was struggling too much. So this, in combination with stress and rescue, can help you out if somebody's struggling underwater, if they're having a real bad problem. And don't pull somebody's weights unless it's absolutely an emergency and unless they've completely lost control. So you're going to learn more skills that are going to be helpful to you in the stress and rescue class. It's going to prepare you for those real world emergencies, and you're going to get to practice some of the techniques we're learning in this class. So in summary, we talked about the three main types of buoyancy compensators, the two primary types of inflators, and what we need to really talk about too is some of the value of perfect buoyancy. If you're bumping into the ground, you're going to tear up your equipment, you're going to tear up the underwater environment, and you're going to make a mess for other divers as they're swimming around with you. This is East Idaho. If you're bouncing off the bottom, you're ruining everybody else's dive. So really important to be able to maintain perfect buoyancy. And then, so to review, Nikki, do you remember how many components there are to the buoyancy control system?
Well, I would say that there's at least two. There's our buoyancy compensator and the weight system that we have, whether it be integrated or a weight belt.
Absolutely. And can you describe what the function of the buoyancy control system is?
Well, you were just talking about, well, one of the questions you asked me earlier is if, like, during my open water course of, adding air, or the taking air out of my buoyancy compensator. So I would say that the function is being able to help us find that kind of perfect spot where we're not crashing into the bottom, but we're close enough that we're still safe to be able to view things.
Absolutely. Yep. Very important. All right. And that was my next slides. Okay.
Nicely done. How did you do?
I did really well. I had better slides this time.
You did. That was a substantial improvement. It's not even just so it was an easy pass. Absolutely. I'd just like to see a little bit more organization with this, but overall, easy pass. So starting at the beginning, define objective as measurable terms. That was clear. I knew at the end of this what I was going to do. A coaching point on this, your topic was types of buoyancy compensators, and it started off as just perfect buoyancy, right? So just be a little more clear. That's just a coaching point. It's not a deduction. And so as we were going through this, I was like, what are we teaching today? And so I had a question to figure that out. So I just went back over it and found the subjects, and it was the types of buoyancy compensators is the actual subject that we're looking for. So no big deal. Just a coaching point. Just I would make that my first slide for the presenter. So as you're going through, it's more of a housekeeping thing, right?
Sure.
Keep it clean and easy. Another coaching point, explain the value of the topic. Make sure that I would encourage you strongly that the objectives, the value, and the main points are this is what you're going to get. And then once you get those clearly, you earned a 3 on this. But I would save my questions till I get through the objectives, value, and overview of points. Because you get to that point, this is what we're going to learn today. And then you can once you get through all that, Nikki, what do you think of this? Or what do you know about that? And get to that, and so it becomes a coaching point. Where it got a little challenging on this, and I would encourage have a separate slide for this. Is the over points, the things we're going to talk about today are going to be A, B, C, and go through. We're going to talk about yellow Post-it notes, the glue on the back of the Post-it notes, the squareness of the Post-it notes, and who invented the Post-it notes. We're going to doom. This is what we're going to talk about today. At the end of this presentation, you'll understand why Post-it notes are all square and they have removable glue on the back. And you'll also be able to discuss how they were invented and why 3M now owns them. So there's 2 separate slides, but just make sure. And so unfortunately on that, I didn't have a clear overview of the main points. And so unfortunately you earned a 0 on that. But the good news is minimum passing score for each subsection is 5 points. You earned 6 points already in that section. So it was an easy pass. If you'd not done such a good job on your value and your measurable terms, where it dropped down 2 more points, then it would have been a fail on that. But it was a 6, so you were still fine. Knowledge and practical application of knowledge, obviously know what you're talking about. It's not a big question there. Equipment sales and counseling, you were so on the edge. Why do I want this? You talk to me, you know your Ranger LTD really well, right? This is my Ranger, and this and this and this. And so give me a clear motivation to purchase it. You need this because it will make your diving better. You will look like Jacques Cousteau. Actually, don't scratch that, because Jacques Cousteau looked like a horrible diver. If you've ever watched those 60s shows, he's all over the place. So you don't want to look like Jacques Cousteau, but you'll look like Ed Sorensen. How about that? So you were close, and you were just a little bit of push, and you'd have been over the edge. So you earned a 2 on that one. Experience promoted continuing education or local dive travel. I got both. I got Roatan. We go to Roatan all the time, and I got stress and rescue. So it was an easy 3 for that one. Safe and accurate information on that. Let's just read through what it says on safe and accurate information. Candidate should demonstrate a dive professional level of knowledge and state accurate and safe information on the specific to the topic. And candidate demonstrate extensive knowledge while providing accurate and safe information. And I like to read these and have us go through and read them often because it keeps us right on target. And again, this was an easy earn of a 3 for me on this, that it was a dive professional level of knowledge, right? You've done this, you get it, you're explaining it to newer divers, bam. Completed the information in a logical sequence. We followed a pattern. You just follow the book. If you follow the book, you can't get in trouble, right? Delivered an environmental or safe diving practice message. I got both. I'd like them to be just a little bit more clear of, you said not bumping the bottom, be a little more clear why bumping the bottom is bad, right? They may be thinking, well, what does it matter if I touch the, so just add in there. I added it as a coaching point, not as a deduction, because it was definitely was a safe, but let's get a little bit more detail. I don't want you to go about bumping the bottom because the coral is fragile. If you touch the coral, you're going to kill the coral in there. So that would hit your environmental message. Or don't bump the bottom because it can scratch you, hurt you. Things that poke you, sting you, or bite you are going to be on the bottom, right? Or you don't want to tear your wetsuit or get cut because there's to be sharp things. So just a little bit more. It was, I felt it in reading the standard on that, and I went back and read the standard that you rose to the point that this earned a 3. So a coaching point for me was to be just a little bit more clear to this. Remember, these are new divers that we're talking to. If they're taking perfect buoyancy, they're almost guaranteed to be under 20 dives, right?
Right.
Usually they're at 10 dives, right? So take that time to just be a little bit more clear with that. Let's see, effective use of training aids. There was only really one training aid. If all you had to do is say, Nikki, take this BC and what do you think? Which one do you think it is? So hand it off, pass it around. It's easy. Or open the app. Those are super easy ones. And again, you were just right there. And I was like, just hand it to her. Just hand it to her. I'm screaming in my head for you to say, hand her the BC, dude. You've got 2. And you're right there. So hand it off, pass the stuff around. You earned a 2 on that. Motivated class to participate and ask questions to evaluate student knowledge. Those were easy 3s for me as well. Where we kind of got a little bit in trouble was restated the main points. There wasn't a clear, these are the points we talked about today. So they were there, but it wasn't clear that this is what's going on and really what was happening. So you're in a 2 on that. The objectives, again, what did we learn and why? Where we're a little muddled, and you got a little fast on your value. So I had a hard time pulling a clear value to me. Why did I want to listen to this information? So in all 3 of those categories, you earned a 2. But that's still good. Accomplished objectives. And I apologize. I misscored you on that. Absolutely. For the subject, you absolutely accomplished the objective. Accurate terminology, speaking ability. You did so much better this time. At the beginning of last conversation, it was, and we did this, and I heard more ands in 3 paragraphs than I think I've ever heard in 3 paragraphs before. It was an impressive number of ands. I started to count them and I threw that paper away. And so it was distracting, right? And so it would have been an easy, accurate terminology, impression, speakability, and mannerisms. It would have been easy to knock that down to a 2, but I didn't want to penalize you there as well because it was already a fail. So this was great. This was so much better. I can't even begin to tell you, so much better. Effective use of time. You were right on time for what you wanted, and you didn't go over. You didn't use unnecessary stories that were outside of boundaries. So easy pass. This is exactly what I was hoping for from you, and so it scored in the 42 if my math adds on this. So good job. That's what we're looking for. Is easy passes like that. I'm placing that on the last page, and I'm setting. So you've got this one with a few notes on it as well. It'll be in your email in just a few moments. But good job. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what you'll need to do for your instructor evaluation. The downside, I guess, is that I need to see presentations on open water, perfect buoyancy, enriched air nitrox, stress rescue, and dive guide. Those are all things you're teaching, and I do 100% class where I need to hear the information from each one of those to know that when I send you off to the evaluation that you have sufficient knowledge on all of those. So there are absolutely more presentations coming. and it gives you more opportunity to practice. But you see the flow, and that's the secret. Is if you pull up that evaluation form and you just check all the boxes, and past just checking the boxes, make sure the boxes are adding together, right? We're not pairing Jello and steak, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, nicely done. I'm excited to see where this goes, and I think you'll do fine on your evaluation. We just have to go through and do all the pieces, at least on the presentation portion. I'm feeling a lot better after this presentation than I did the last one. So, guys, let's take a look at our calendars if you have your calendars handy, and let's figure out. Nikki will be in Denver next week from the 15th to the 18th. Would you be able to do an evening presentation while you're there?
I should be able to because I'll have access to the internet, but I guess that means I'm taking 2 computers with me.
Sure.
That'll be okay.
Tuesday the 16th?
Tuesday the 16th would work.
Okay, we can do Monday. I didn't remember what. Go ahead.
No, Tuesday's probably better than Monday is.
Okay. Let's do that at 6:30. ITC Presentations. And let's talk about subjects. So let's see. Ken, you've done delivery system, right? From Open Water. So I'll mark that one as not good, but done. And then you did types of buoyancy compensators. That one you did fantastic on. Nicely done. So I'm going to mark that was done as in green. Nikki, you have done, let's see.
The concept of buoyancy over expansion injuries. So I have buoyancy, I have lift capacity and developing proper breathing techniques.
Okay. Marking these off as we go along so I don't get lost on them. All righty. So Ken, I will look forward to a presentation from Open Water, Section 3, Basic Respiratory and Circulatory Anatomy. That's always a fun one. So if you can have that prepared, as well as let's go something from let's shake it up a little. Well, no, let's just go ahead and stick with buoyancy control. So that'll be yours for Tuesday, is buoyancy control and basic respiratory. If you've got the section, it'll tell you exactly which section to pull it from as well. So there we go. And information systems. So, and I will find and give you a second chance on another subject from Open Water Diver as well. So I'll dig through and figure something else out for Open Water. So because I'd like to see a couple of passes from each section to make sure that we're good to go and squared away.
Okay.
Perfect. I will send out the invite tomorrow morning with a link, another link to the StreamYard as well. But in the recording, what questions do you guys have for me? Ken, what do you think so far? Good, safe, accurate information, good learning, good process. Any coaching tips?
Yeah, everything's going good so far. I mean, good information. So,
good. Anything you'd improve? Anything you want to see more of, less of?
Not at this point.
Okay. All I can hope is that I'm doing a good job for you guys, and that you feel like you're getting a quality education out of this. So,
absolutely.
Apologize. I had something, and I guess I should write my questions down when they occur to me because now it's gone. So,
I'm sure at 11 o'clock tonight you'll wake me up with that question.
Whatever. I might wake you up, but probably not for a question related to scuba diving. Probably because the dog needs